A woman gives her pregnant sister a baby gift. A little tiara, white gold, the kind of thing you'd put on a shelf rather than on a baby. The sister doesn't want it, tries to return it, and finds out at the counter, in front of staff, with security watching, that it was never bought. It was taken. She's humiliated in a jewelry store over a gift she didn't ask for. So she confronts her sister. And her sister looks her in the face and says she has no idea what she's talking about. That exchange happens in the 5th episode of Breaking Bad. And over the next 5 years, across 62 episodes of one of the most closely analyzed shows ever made, not one single person will ever say the word kleptomania out loud to Marie Schrader. I want to talk about that because it's the thing this character is actually for, and because almost every family has a version of it, somebody whose problem is the wrong shape to be taken seriously. Start with what she's actually doing, mechanically, because the details are precise. She takes small things, a spoon, a picture frame, a little ceramic figure, objects of essentially no value from places she has no business being, at real risk to a career and a marriage that both matter to her enormously. That last part is the whole diagnosis in one observation. She is not stealing things she wants. If she wanted them, she could buy them. She has a job. Her husband has a job. They own a house. The objects are worthless to her. Several of them she never even looks at again. That's the clinical signature of the actual disorder, and it's what separates it from theft. Theft has a motive you can name. I wanted the thing, so I took it. This has no motive available to the person doing it. There's a buildup of pressure, an act, and a release, and the object is essentially a byproduct, which is why the standard response, "Why would you do that? You didn't even need it," is not a question she can answer. There is no answer of the kind being demanded. Now watch how the people around her respond, because this is the essay. Her sister treats it as a betrayal, personal, deliberate, an insult, and understandably so, given that she was the one standing at the counter. Her husband treats it as an embarrassment, something to be smoothed over, apologized for, kept quiet, handled with the professional courtesy available to a federal agent whose wife has been detained. He's not cruel about it. He's just visibly hoping it will go away. The realtor treats it as a crime, which it is, and nobody, not one person in 5 seasons, across every conversation this family has, ever treats it as a symptom. Nobody says, "This has a name, it's recognized." It tends to get worse under stress, and there are people who treat it. That sentence is never spoken to her by anyone. Which brings me to the timing, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Her stealing escalates at exactly the point in her life where she has the least power over anything. Her husband is shot. He survives badly injured and comes home unable to walk. And Marie becomes the full-time carer overnight, the lifting, the bedpans, the appointments. The humiliations that go both ways in that room. He is furious at his own body, and she is the only available target, so he is contemptuous of her constantly, for months. He refuses her help, and then needs it. He fixates on a rock collection and screams at her about it. Nothing she does is right, and nothing she does is acknowledged. And in the middle of this, she starts putting on other people's names and walking through strangers' houses. That's not greed. That's a woman with no control over a single element of her own life, acquiring one small piece of evidence that she can still affect the world. The spoon is not the point. The point is that she reached out, and something moved. And here's the detail that makes her case unique in television, and the reason I think this is a genuinely great piece of writing, whether or not the writers fully intended it. She doesn't just steal at those open houses. She invents people. She turns up as a woman whose husband is a professional bass fisherman. She turns up as a book editor. She constructs whole lives, jobs, spouses, backstories, and delivers them to estate agents with total conviction. And then wanders through a stranger's bedroom, being that person for 45 minutes. The theft is almost secondary to that. What she's actually taking is the house, the life, the version of herself that exists inside it, where she's interesting and traveled and married to someone exciting, instead of being the woman who wipes a man who despises her and then goes to work photographing other people's insides. She's an X-ray technician, incidentally. She spends her working life looking directly into people and having absolutely no power over what she finds there. I don't think that's an accident either. Now the bigger things points at, which is why nobody helps her. There is a hierarchy of respectable suffering, and we all know the order even though nobody writes it down. Cancer is at the top. Cancer gets casseroles, fundraisers, sympathy from strangers, and unlimited moral credit. The entire premise of this show depends on that being true. A gunshot wound gets a hero's reception. Addiction sits somewhere in the middle these days. It used to be lower, and the campaign to move it up took decades of hard work by a lot of people. And then near the bottom, below the waterline, sit the compulsions that produce small, embarrassing, undignified behavior. Hoarding, compulsive stealing, the rituals people perform in private, trichotillomania. The things that don't look like illness, they look like character defects, or attention-seeking, or bad manners. The lower down that hierarchy your problem sits, the less help you get, and the less permission you have to describe it as suffering at all. Walter White gets a diagnosis and immediately becomes the moral center of every room he walks into. Marie gets an eye roll and a family that changes the subject. The severity has nothing to do with it. What determines your position on that list is whether your affliction is legible as tragedy or legible as embarrassment, and the denial is what seals it, which is the cruelest loop in the whole thing. She lies about it flatly, to her sister's face with complete conviction, immediately, and that lie is what makes everyone furious, far more than the theft, because it reads as contempt for their intelligence. But the denial is not a strategy, it's the shame. Anyone whose problem lives at the bottom of that hierarchy learns very early that admitting it will not produce help, it will produce disgust. So they deny it. And the denial makes the people around them angry, and the anger confirms that admitting it would have been a catastrophe. And the loop closes and locks. By the time anyone might have offered her something useful, she is completely committed to the position that there is nothing to discuss. Then there's the purple. Everything in that woman's house is purple. Her clothes, her walls, her kitchen, her car. It's played as a joke, a quirk to make her memorable, an aesthetic tick. But look at what it actually is. Total, absolute control over one small domain. She cannot control her husband's recovery, or his moods, or her sister's mysterious behavior, or eventually anything at all about the catastrophe engulfing her family. She can control the color of every single object within her reach, and she does, comprehensively, without exception. That's not a joke. That's the same impulse as the spoon, expressed somewhere it's legal. Now the honest objection, because I want to be fair to the show. Isn't this overreading? Isn't Marie simply written as the annoying sister, with a bit of theft attached to make her memorable? And aren't I building a psychiatric case study out of what was basically a comic runner that the writers eventually got bored of and dropped? Maybe. The storyline does get dropped, and it never receives the treatment a serious subject would get. But two things. First, the pattern in the text is clinically coherent whether or not it was designed to be. Worthless objects, escalation under stress and powerlessness, immediate flat denial, the identity play, the shame. That's not a random collection of behaviors. It's the actual shape of the actual thing. And second, the fact that the show drops it is the argument. The narrative treats her compulsion exactly the way her family does. Mildly interesting for a while, never named, quietly forgotten once something more dramatic comes along. The neglect isn't a flaw in the depiction, it is the depiction. Which brings me to the end, and to what I think is the real indictment. Marie Schrader is the only adult in that family who gets it completely right. When the truth about Walt finally comes out, she does not equivocate for a second. She doesn't negotiate. She doesn't look for an angle. She doesn't try to manage it. She says plainly that he is a monster, that he must be exposed, that there is no version of this where the family protects him. She is correct on every point. Immediately, at a moment when everyone else in the room is still constructing reasons to wait. The woman nobody took seriously turns out to have the clearest moral vision of anyone on screen, and it costs her everything. Her husband is killed. Her sister is destroyed. She ends with no house, no family, and no vindication that anyone alive is willing to give her. So here's what I'd take from her, and it has nothing to do with New Mexico. Everybody has someone in their family whose problem is the wrong shape. It's not dramatic. It's not sympathetic. It's small and repetitive and faintly humiliating, and it makes people sigh when it comes up. And because it doesn't look like real suffering, it never gets treated as real, and so it never gets treated at all. Ask what it would actually take for you to start calling that person's thing a condition rather than a habit. For Marie, it would have taken one sentence from any of the 4 or 5 people who loved her, at any point over 5 years. Nobody ever said it.